It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, January 23rd. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that has some really important questions about the Phantoms to ask this week.
More questions than answers.
Yeah, we'll get into that, plus preview tonight's Flyers matchup against the Tampa Bay Lightning, all on today's show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And we are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. You can find us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. How's it going today, Russ?
Yeah, it's going good. Going good. I mean, we got some things to talk about. We got to have some. I think a TED talk about the fans. But, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I think so. In the meantime, as of recording today's show, we have not heard anything from the Flyers on Owen Tippett. They did have the day off yesterday, though.
Yeah, they had the day off, so my guess is he's probably not playing. They may say it's a game time decision, but I don't expect him to be in there, honestly.
Right. And we did talk on yesterday's show about, there's only a few games left. If he's banged up, maybe the best thing is to just leave him out for these 3 games and then come back raring to go after the All-Star break. In the meantime, the Flyers are facing the Tampa Bay Lightning in tonight's matchup. So like we said on yesterday's show with our nemesis, it does not get any easier for these last few matchups. Of course, the first thing you think about with the Lightning is goaltending and Vasilevsky. He did play their most recent game, which was a loss to Detroit 2-1. Detroit actually swept the Lightning.
Yeah, Detroit
this year.
They've had a little bit of a surge, so yeah, they've done well against them.
Yeah, they have. But before that loss, the Lightning had a 5-game win streak going. That sounds familiar to have a 5-game win streak, and 7-3 in their last 10. But they're in 5th in the Atlantic right now, which, we keep talking about the Metro being tough, but that little middle part of the Atlantic is, I think, just as tough right now. 2nd to 5th are pretty close in the standings right now.
Yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden the Leafs pick it up and Tampa picks it up, and they're all of a sudden taking away wild card spots. So yeah, it could be interesting. The Tampa kind of knows that, hey, this is the time of the year where they're going to have to start making headway even before the All-Star break, and they've been doing that. And so I think because they didn't have Vasilevsky for a while, they started off slow, but they've been going good lately. Like Victor Hedman's been amazing for the last month. I know because I have him on my fantasy team. Like he's a guy now that in this game is somebody that you really want to make sure you limit what he can do with the puck.
Yeah, and aside from him, that top line of point with Stamkos and Kucherov, like that is really good.
Yeah, it's on another level good. It's kind of like the Avalanche, except the Avalanche have it all the way through the lineup and Tampa doesn't. But the thing about Kucherov is if you let him have clean zone entries, he's just too dangerous. He's 2nd in points, he's 2nd in assists. He can really pick you apart. So that's the big thing is don't let him have clean zone entries. Try and stand him up before he gets in the offensive zone. That's going to be something that's easier said than done. And that's something that you can't do with an 11-7 because, again, guys are not going to be playing with their regular partners for everything. And Cooper's going to run 4 lines. So if nothing else, you think the Flyers learned and would not go 11-7 this game. But we'll see.
Yeah, we had a whole discussion about the 11-7 on yesterday's show. So if you have not listened to it or watched it, I highly recommend you do, because we got into sort of the details of why versus the Avalanche specifically, we thought that that was a poor strategy. And again, some of these top teams in general,
Right.
that it doesn't necessarily make sense in those situations, which I think does carry forward to this game against Tampa. I
Yeah, they
think
had
you're
too
right
many
there.
winners, too many cup winners, too many just great offensive talents that you can't ignore.
Right. And you look at just scoring stats for Tampa right now, they have 4 guys on their team with more points than Travis Konechny does, who's the Flyers team points leader. I
Right.
mean, that's productivity right there.
It is. I mean, look, their defense isn't as good as the Flyers, but some of that was earlier in the year too when Vasilevsky wasn't there. So yeah, the amount of points they score, again, like we said a couple of games ago, they're going to have to try and block as many shots as they can. But if they go with that other strategy and don't block a lot of shots, then this might not work out well for them. They need to
Yeah,
block
they
shots. They have to limit that top line as much as possible.
absolutely. And, because Tampa got off to a slower start this year and with the Vasilevsky injury, I pulled some stats about them, but I only did it since December 1st because I thought that was more characteristic of
Hmm.
the current team as
Yeah, I
they are
agree.
playing now. And in that time period, they have the 6th best power play in the NHL, which, the Flyers PK has been a huge part of their success, but it hasn't been as golden as as it was, I think, earlier. It's still very good. I just think they're giving up more power play goals more recently. So I think that's something to keep an
Well,
eye
it's
on for
hard. It's
sure.
hard to keep up that level of like trying to
Yeah.
get the shorthanded goal, trying to pick out that spot to do it. I think when you start playing the better teams, you start realizing you miss if you miss on that opportunity to try and go, get a puck and take it the other way, it might end up in the back of your net. Where against some teams, you could really take more chances. I think that's a part of it too.
Right, and when you have a top power play unit for Tampa, like that top line we just talked about, and then you add Victor Hedman, and then, Nick Paul is the 5th. Like, honestly, does it matter who the 5th person is when you have those 4
Well, but
guys
Paul
on
goes to
you?
the net.
He
That's his
does, he
gift
does.
there, and that's the other problem is last game the Flyers had trouble clearing the net. They're going to have to do it this game, otherwise they're going to have a similar problem.
Right, and, so I think that just staying out of the box is gonna be really important in this one,
Yes.
even as good as the Flyers PK has been, just this power play is extremely good.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it can be deadly at times. The goaltending could be deadly at times. Like this is a game where you have to limit the mistakes, and then you really have to take advantage of everything. So like you've got to really hit the net as much as possible against this team. Missing shots could really cost you because even just a bad bounce along the boards could go the other way and give them a 2-on-1.
Right. The other thing with Tampa is, in that same time period that I talked about, since December 1st, they're the second best in the NHL at high danger chances for percentage. And it really matches up with their goals location shot in that edge technology data,
Yeah,
because you look at they have a higher percentage of their goals scored than the Flyers by a significant amount in that zone, right outside the crease. And that's high danger area, right? And so they're
I think the
getting
four guys that could score from there. That's where
yeah,
Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, they all and Nick Paul, they all live there.
right. And so it's gonna be important for the goaltending to keep control of rebounds. You gotta clear the puck out of there at all costs. And so it's gonna be focusing on puck control in the defensive zone, is gonna be really important, and having clean zone exits.
Yeah, clean zone exits is going to be another thing. I mean, that's going to be a big deal. That's where Drysdale could really help you, um, no question about it. And I think York as well. Sanheim needs to sort of get his game back. I think his game has not hit rock bottom, but it's definitely hit a snag.
Yeah, I think he has his moments, but I think you're right, especially defensively. He's made
Right,
a
that's
few
what I really
mistakes.
yeah.
Yeah, that I think this is a game where everybody's got to be on point, and I mean that figuratively and
Yeah,
literally when
don't
it's
take the
sprayed in
lazy
points.
penalty. Right, don't take the lazy penalties in this one, the trippings and stuff because they're gonna come back
Right.
and haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. So should be a tough but fun matchup, I think, just
Oh, yeah.
given the speed. I think it should be a lot of fun to
John
watch. The
Cooper will
Flyers,
always he might even get into it with Torts, he's not afraid to show his emotion on the bench.
not at all. The Flyers play the Tampa Bay Lightning at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can catch every second of the Flyers' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. And up next, we are going to talk about the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets, and with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting excited for all the fun you'll have. My favorite part of the Game Time app is it's great for getting notified about those flash deals. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seat. They've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even up to an hour after it starts. It's the place to find your last minute seat. Also, tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On tomorrow's show, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on the app formerly known as Twitter, or comment over on our YouTube channel. Russ, it was another mixed weekend for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms with 2 losses and a win. They were shut out pretty horribly by the Rochester Americans 6-0 last Wednesday. Then they had a back to back on the road against the Cleveland Monsters, one of the top teams in the AHL. They won the first, or they lost the first one 4-2, and then won the second one 4-3. Um, they're still in 7th in the division, still on the outside looking in as far as a playoff spot. I would say the good news, Helge Grans was back. He's been out for, 6, 7 weeks now. So it's good to see him. Evan Poli was back. First game for him since December 8th. But Wade Allison is still out from his injury, and Louis Belpedio is out as well. So, you gain some, you lose some there as far as the injuries go. But, Allison and Belpedio are pretty big parts of this team. So it is unfortunate to not have them there, but the nature of the AHL is you make do with what you've got, right?
Right, 'cause a lot of times guys get called up and whatever, and yeah, you have to sort of be used to that. There's not a ton of resiliency on this team. I know there was some resiliency finally in one of these games, but I mean, it didn't really salvage enough. Um, and there's no resiliency in the goaltending. I was just looking at their goaltending compared to the rest of the league. I mean, Cal
Yeah.
Peterson's ranked 37th and Sandstrom 49th. Now, Sandstrom will cut a break to a little bit because he hadn't played a lot and he still hasn't played probably enough for him. But Peterson, I mean, at this point, you do have to kind of ask yourself, is there a reason he's even still here? Like I know you got him in that trade and you're going to have to eat the salary. You could just do something else with them, loan them just somewhere. You don't have to have them on Lehigh if you don't want to.
Yeah, it's a tough situation with the goaltending right now. But I do think that ultimately one of the bigger problems here, and we've talked about this with the Flyers a little bit this season, is a lack of finish.
Hmm.
And that's really what's going on, that they're getting scoring chances. And even in that 6-0 loss versus Rochester, they got a ton of scoring chances. And I know, Russ, you famously like to say that you don't care about shots on goal because ultimately they don't matter. It's about scoring chances and high danger chances, which I agree with. But this, the 2 games against Cleveland were, I think, indicative of that, where they lose the first game, but they held Cleveland to, like, I think it was 20 shots on goal. The other game was upended, the other way, but the Phantoms won. So
Right.
it really depends on the quality of chances and the team's ability to finish. And this has become very apparent that they're just not scoring enough to win these games, especially when the goaltending can't keep up.
Right. I mean, that's a part of it. I mean, even before the goaltending, like, do they ever think of calling up Matt Brown? Remember, we talked about Matt Brown not long ago. We saw him make that great move in the All-Star game. I mean, there's definitely some offensive ability there. Is he ever going to get a shot, or is they just have him destined for Reading? I don't know, but
They have called him up a few times, but very sporadically, I would say. But he is, I believe, the top scorer on Reading right
he
now.
is. I mean, wouldn't it be a bad
So
thing to kind of put a jolt into the team a little bit?
maybe. I mean, I think it's possible. Head coach Ian LePerriere did talk to Bob Rochuk on the broadcast prior to Saturday's game that they did end up winning. So this was, basically after losing the last 2 games against Rochester and Cleveland, and they're sort of having a come to Jesus moment with this team right now. And part of me is like, okay, but is it a little too late for that at this point? And like, how are they approaching this? Because it seems like from what he was saying that they were approaching it more on an individual player basis. On, okay, Olle Lycksell, this is what you need to work on. Okay, Tanner
Yeah.
Lazinski, this is what you need to work on, but not from a team level perspective. And this is a team sport. So, like, are they going about this the right way?
Well, like I said, just to further the Brown conversation, I mean, he only got 4 games in Lehigh, and then he went straight to Reading. Very successful college player, still only 24. Since he's a pointy game there, it wouldn't be bad to bring him up. It wouldn't. Um, as far as some of the other things going on, I look at the lineups, and I wonder, like, why is Garrett Wilson playing on the second line, like, ever? Like, I know he had points a couple years ago, but he'd be fine on the fourth line. We know what he is on the team. You know what he's supposed to do. You need real production up there. I know they're looking for greasiness and maybe a way for the other guys to get some goals fed to them, but I don't think that that's necessarily the way. I mean, again, a guy like Furry, just keep him on the fourth line. Some of these fourth liners, just they're the ones that should be rotating, and everybody else should be the guys that they should be on. Top 3 lines should be almost set at this point. And unless there's injury, and unless they're going to bring up a guy like Brown, try and keep them set and see what you can do. Again, move if you want to, like, move Denoyer from the third to the second to the third. I get it, because you're trying to, like, fire him up. That's fine. The top line you don't have to mess with, really. I mean, that's actually good. But a guy like Avon, at some point, maybe you can move him to the second line if you think he's playing with confidence, or maybe the second line could use Matt Brown, and that's where you get Matt Brown. You take Wilson out of there as an example on that Wednesday lineup they had. You put Matt Brown in there. You put Wilson in on the fourth line, and Furry doesn't play. I could live with that, and I think the
Right.
offense would be better.
Yeah, and they did move Avon up in that game
Yes.
on Saturday to the second line, on a line with Rhett Gardner and Cooper Marody, which I think makes a lot more sense. Now, I understand why they want to put Denoyer and Avon together because they're developing together.
Right.
But Denoyer is just like not doing it this year. And, I'm not saying he's a lost cause. Far from it. I think he can get it back.
No, but
But
these
right
were some of the things that when people kept asking me about Denoyer, I would say, listen, there's a lot of offense in his game, but when he's got to focus playing an all-around game, it's going to affect him. And so he hasn't really
right.
figured all that out yet.
Right, but my point is that I think Avon, like separating Avon from him right now is better for Avon.
Yeah, I agree.
As Denoyer is going through this, I think that putting him on a line with Wilson isn't the worst thing in the world, because I think that, Wilson will take care of the physicality and Denoyer can focus on his game. And then you have Avon up with more of a scoring mentality line right now. So, they have done a few things like that. And it's been really interesting to see them put Jennings and Adder back together a little bit this weekend. So, they are moving some pieces around to try and make things work. I think and they say, oh, we're going to simplify our game. Well, you can only simplify your game so much, to the
Right.
point where then you're just rearranging the deck chairs, as you like to say,
But
as
there's
well.
something else that we're not talking about. The other thing we're not talking about is if guys feel like they're not going to get called up, there is a point where some of them can get discouraged that they feel like they're on the cusp. I'm not saying, look, they're all pros. They all have to go through a pro season, but it is nice if you have that carrot where there's a possibility you're going to get called up. But I think a hindrance in that is the fact that they don't play the same game. They don't play the same systems. They don't do anything the same. And really, John Tortorella has said he'll just call in and say, who's the guy? And doesn't care if they're playing the same. But I think management should take over and make Lehigh play the same and say, hey, listen, John, we understand that you don't care, but we do. And we're going to do this because we think this will help you. I think this will give you better choices when you do want to have somebody call up, and maybe you'll call up more people as a result. I think that's the other thing, is you're kind of giving John a built-in excuse to say, well, look, nobody's doing well in Lehigh. It's not great. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't help the team moving forward. So I think if they worked like that, like a lot of other organizations would, it would help everybody. And I think it would help, the NHL team too.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more to talk about on that subject related to development and calling guys out versus not in this circumstance. And we are going to get to that part of it coming up next.
It's the halfway point this season, Flyers fans, and the team is still in the playoff hunt. Regardless of where we are in the standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper's our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether superstars like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms for use for details and locational availability.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with all the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league, like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today over on YouTube and subscribe. Russ, jumping off from what you just said at the end of the last segment about having a more consistent system in place between the two teams, I've been thinking a lot the last couple weeks, especially as it looks more and more like maybe this team won't make the playoffs.
Right.
Is it better for these guys to get a call up and get out of there, and to have that carrot that you're talking about, as put in the individual effort, you could have a chance at a call up this season, kind of motivation there if the overall team isn't working? Or is it best for this team to kind of hunker down because they aren't playing in that same system that the Flyers do? And so they got to figure themselves out and figure out how to work as a team a little bit better, and not have that sort of quote unquote distraction of thinking about a call up Of course, like injury, emergency situations, that's a whole other thing. But like, looking just at it basically, is it worth it to try and like, have a little bit of a reset like it seems like they're trying to do right now in Lehigh Valley, and try and work together as a team and try to figure something out that's different to get them to the playoffs?
Well, I think it's both. I think what has to happen is they do need to do their work there, but they also do need to have it in the back of their minds. They're not thinking about it all the time that, hey, if I do X here, maybe I can get some more NHL time or some NHL time where I'll get, to break into the NHL lineup. And that's a big deal. I mean, I don't think the Flyers have had a chance to do it enough yet. Maybe they will in the second half. We'll see. But in the interim, yeah, guys have to always play their game, but there has to be something else. They're not going to just be satisfied like someone like Wilson, sure, because he knows he's not getting called up. There's certain guys that know their lot in the AHL, and that's fine. They're professionals. They get paid for it like that, and they understand. But some of the others are looking for that. They're looking for that encouragement, in other words, for that. I mean, especially the younger ones. Now, they're not going to get called up this year. That's fine. But if they don't see anybody getting called up regularly and stuff, they're going to wonder, like, next year, am I going to get a shot? I mean, because everybody thinks next year is their year. And everybody always thinks that that's when they're going to get a shot. And, this year there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for these guys to do anything at the NHL level, honestly. And look at Rodney Adder. He's not even gotten a sniff.
Right. And I think that, there's good reason for that, and that the Flyers have been generally healthy. I believe, they're in the bottom third of the league in a good way. In terms of man games lost, they're in the bottom third of the league in a good
Right.
way. So, I think there's a good reason why the call-ups have been fewer and further between, but there's also, we know that Tortorella is a devil guy.
Mhm.
He just is, that he would prefer to go with his guys. He talks about, I believe in this group. And, that is a valid
Well,
thought
then,
process to
it's up to
have.
Danny Briere to kind of say, hey, John, on your day off, let's go watch the Phantoms play. I mean, coaches will do that from time to time.
Yeah.
And that's the way
Yeah.
you get around that.
Right. And that's kind of where I was going with that, is like, there has to be a way to break down that barrier a little bit more and have a more cohesive system in place, because it's very clear that there is not right now. And that, in order to have opportunities for some of these guys, but also figure out a way to make these guys more successful as a team, like there
Mhm.
has to be some more barriers broken between the Flyers and Phantoms level of things.
Yeah, no question. And I think right now it's failing there. I mean, it just is. It's not failing just because we watch them in seventh place. It's failing from other aspects too. And again, they're the ones that have to have the biggest change in development for change to happen at the NHL level.
Right, right. And I think they know this to some degree right now. It's just figuring out what are their next steps going to be in order to fix it. And that's what we got to keep an eye on. In the meantime, they've got two games this week, Friday and Saturday. Wilkes-Barre Scranton is coming to Lehigh Valley, and then the Toronto Marlies. So
Not an
two
easy
different,
weekend.
not an easy weekend, two different styles of play completely between these two teams.
Yeah.
So opportunities abound here. Hopefully the Phantoms can turn it around and figure some things out. Thanks for making us your first listen today. Tomorrow on the show, we, of course, will recap the game against Tampa and get into our mailbag. So send those questions in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on our YouTube channel. I am Rachel. I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.